Alright, so here's where I'm at. I've got my chassis, the front suspension and everything all mocked up with the frame stiffener. So what I have to do is I have to cut the frame to notch it for the TinWorks notches, C-notches. So just to make sure I know where that rear end falls, it should come in right in this area, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and grab the rear differential and grab the trailing arms and go ahead and loosely fit it together, and then lower the frame down to see exactly where it sets, so that I know I can mark the frame, and that way I know that where the rear end is going to come into play, that the C-notch is going to cover it. I don't think there's going to be an issue, but I'd hate to get it all installed and find out that there's a problem. So that's where I'm at, and let's get this done. One thing's for sure, I'm going to have to cut these bolts off once I get this all set up, because these are going to be way too long. Coming down. So that's that. So these go on. I'm guessing that they set just like that. Pretty sure that's the case. And if that's it, there's more than enough room. So now, the other side, indexes, there's a hole here for the cross member that used to go in here. And it looks like it indexes on that hole. And then there's also a hole where the coil spring used to mount. It looks like it's going to index on those two. That one doesn't look like it's going to index right. So that one's not good. Set that back, other one back up. It may just be indexing off of that. Well, next thing is to take it, to get this back out of there. I'm going to be dismantling the front suspension and getting a left and a right frame rail. Cut the C-notches out. Once I get those done, there's a cross member that goes in. Guess it indexes with that. So these are the lower shock mount brackets. These set between the differential and the trailing arm. This one goes on the passenger side. And they just sit up in just like that. And that's what the panhard bar connects up to this side. And then there's a cross member that goes in. This cross member goes in, and this bolts up into the back of this with the frame sandwich, so it'll be just sitting just like that. So probably won't be able to get it in because of how tight everything is, but this will go in set like that, and then the panhard bar goes across. So like I said, I'm going to get the frame rails apart, get set up to C-notch them or to cut the notches, and then get it all mocked up, all the holes drilled, get everything set, and then I guess it's about time to strip it down and prime. Right now my goal for next year is to have the chassis primed. I'd like to have a fuel cell in it. Most of the brake lines run. Have everything in primer, get it all back together, possibly have a transmission by then and have an engine and transmission sitting in the frame mocked up, and then take this to the C10 Nats next year and enter it as a work in progress. So that's the plan. We'll see where we get. So I had talked with Taylor about these about this kit, and he had sent me pictures, and I noticed that the cross member that went over the rear end and the one behind the rear end had been removed. So at that point, those were the only two cross members I had left in the frame. That's why in the last video I was removing those, and I ended up with a left and right frame assembly. I assembled the chassis the way it is now, but my other camera didn't record, so that's why it's assembled and there was no video. So once I get this all apart and get the C-notches in and get the suspension in, I'm going to go through, I'm going to be marking all the holes in the chassis I don't need, and possibly welding a bunch of those up just to clean it up. I've already welded up a bunch on this frame rail and a few on the other side, but I'm going to try to get most of them welded up to end up with a cleaner chassis once it's done. Taking some measurements, I figure with 20-inch wheels running probably about a 255 60 20, I should have between 7 and 8 inches of clearance from my lowest point to the ground. So that's what I'm shooting for. We'll see how it goes. I may have to go to bigger wheels, not buying wheels until I have a majority of it sitting on the ground. So let's get this thing apart, start tearing her down. One of the really nice things about this suspension over the factory trailing arms is this is a much better joint on the front, the hind joint, and with the way they're configured, set this up here, so you can adjust your wheelbase slightly. So if you've got an issue where it's not perfectly symmetrical, you can adjust these a little bit, out a little bit, make one just slightly longer than the other to true up the rear end in the frame so that you get it tracking correctly. So, and these are greasable Heim joints. So my intent is to have the grease or the zerk fitting at the top whenever I get it assembled, and then I'll get caps for these along with all the joints up front. Up front, all I'm going to have is upper and lower ball joints and sway bar. I don't want to drill any holes for any of that stuff until I get these C-notches done, because I want to make sure that this chassis is truly square before I drill holes for the sway bar or anything. I do know that the sway bar is probably going to interfere with tie rod ends with the end links that came with it, so I'm probably going to have to extend those, but we'll get to that later.